Tonight, we explore mindfulness, one of the most essential teachings in all of Buddhism. Mindfulness is often called the foundation of awareness. It is the practice of being fully present in this moment, right here, right now, awake to what is actually happening as it happens. Before we begin, feel free to share what time it is and where you are listening from. The Buddha taught that most of us spend our lives half asleep, lost in thoughts about the past or fantasies about the future. We miss the only moment we actually have, which is this one. Mindfulness wakes us up to our own lives. It brings us home to the present moment, where life is actually occurring. The stories and teachings we'll explore tonight will unfold gently, carrying you deeper into rest with each one. Simply allow yourself to listen and let this ancient wisdom settle into you like rain soaking into earth. Let us begin this gentle journey together. In Buddhist teaching, there is a profound insight. Something happens and we react instantly. Someone speaks harshly, and anger rises before we even know it. We hear news, and worry floods in automatically. We see something we want, and desire pulls us forward without pause. This is living like a machine. Stimulus, response. Stimulus, response. No gap. No choice. No freedom. Mindfulness opens this gap. It creates a sacred pause between what happens and how we respond. In that pause, we can choose. We can see clearly. We can respond with wisdom instead of reacting from habit. This is one of the most powerful gifts that mindfulness offers. Not control over what happens to us, but freedom in how we meet what happens. The Buddha taught his students to watch for this gap, to become aware of what arises before acting on it. When anger comes, notice it before you speak. When fear arises, feel it before you run. When desire pulls, recognize it before you grasp. In that moment of recognition, freedom is born. Let us explore a story that shows how this truth can be learned. There once lived a merchant named Hiroshi who owned a fabric shop in a bustling market town. Hiroshi sold fine silk and cotton to customers who came from villages all around. His fabrics were of good quality and his prices were fair. But Hiroshi had a problem that was slowly destroying his peace and damaging his relationships. He could not control his reactions. When a customer complained about a price, anger would flash through him before he could stop it. His face would flush red. His voice would rise sharp and defensive. He would say things that made customers feel unwelcome. When someone questioned the quality of his cloth, Hiroshi would take it as a personal attack. His heart would pound. His words would come out harsh and argumentative, even when the customer had a reasonable concern. Hiroshi knew this was a problem. After each outburst, shame would wash over him. He would promise himself to do better. But when the next difficult situation arose, the same pattern would repeat itself. Something would happen, and his reaction would explode forth before he even knew what he was doing. His wife could see the toll this was taking. "Another hard day?" she would ask when he came home tense and troubled. "I lost my temper again," Hiroshi would admit. "A woman said my silk was overpriced. I know I should have stayed calm, but the words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. Why do I keep doing this? I do not want to be this way." One afternoon, a monk came to Hiroshi's shop. He was an older man with a weathered face and calm eyes. He moved slowly through the shop, examining fabrics with careful attention. Hiroshi watched him, trying to be patient, though he had other customers waiting. The monk finally selected a length of blue cotton. "How much for this?" he asked. Hiroshi named his price. It was fair, based on the quality of the cloth. The monk nodded thoughtfully. "That is more than I have with me today. I can only afford half that amount." Hiroshi felt the familiar heat rising in his chest, the tightness in his jaw. Here it came again, that surge of defensive anger. His mind filled with sharp responses. This monk was trying to cheat him, to get his goods for less than they were worth. But before Hiroshi could speak, the monk did something unexpected. He simply stood there, looking at Hiroshi with gentle, knowing eyes. Not judging, not provoking, just watching with a kind of patient awareness. In that moment of being seen, Hiroshi became aware of what was happening inside him. He could feel the anger pulsing in his chest. He could feel the words forming in his throat, ready to burst out. But something about the monk's calm presence created a small space, just a breath's worth of space. And in that space, Hiroshi did not react. "I see," Hiroshi said finally, surprised by his own measured tone. "Perhaps I could offer you a smaller piece for the amount you have." The monk smiled. "That would be kind. Thank you." After the transaction was complete, the monk did not leave immediately. He looked at Hiroshi and said, "May I tell you something I observed?" Hiroshi nodded, curious. "When I said I could not pay your full price, anger arose in you. I could see it in your face, in your body, but you did not act on it immediately." There was a pause. In that pause, something shifted. "Do you know what that was?" Hiroshi thought about this. "I am not sure. I felt the anger, but somehow I did not speak from it." "That pause," the monk said gently, "is the most important discovery you can make. That small space between what happens and how you respond. In that space lies all your freedom." He set down the fabric he had purchased. "You have been suffering because you react instantly to everything. A customer says something, and anger rises and words fly out, all in one movement. No gap, no choice. You are like a bell that rings the moment it is struck." Hiroshi felt something shift in his understanding. This was exactly what happened. He was like a bell. Strike him, and he rang. No choice in the matter. "But you are not a bell," the monk continued. "You are a human being with awareness. When anger arises, you can notice it before you act on it. That noticing creates a space, and in that space, you can choose how to respond." "But how?" Hiroshi asked. "The reaction happens so fast. By the time I notice my anger, I have already spoken." The monk smiled. "This is why we practice mindfulness. We learn to pay attention to what arises inside us, not to stop the anger from arising, but to see it when it does arise, before we act on it." He pointed to Hiroshi's chest. "Right now, as we talk, you can feel your breathing. You can feel your heart beating. You can notice sensations in your body. This is awareness. You already have this capacity. The practice is to bring that same awareness to your inner experiences. When anger comes, feel it in your body before it takes over your mouth." Hiroshi listened carefully. "Will you teach me how to do this?" "I will show you a simple practice," the monk said. "When a customer says something that would normally trigger your anger, try this. Before you respond, take one conscious breath. Just one. Feel the breath entering your body. Feel it leaving. This takes only a few seconds. But in those seconds, awareness arises. You notice what you are feeling, and in that noticing, you create the gap." "That is all?" Hiroshi asked. It seemed too simple. "That is all," the monk replied. "But simple does not mean easy. Your habit of instant reaction is very strong. You will forget many times. The customer will say something, and you will react before you remember to breathe. This is natural. Do not be discouraged. Each time you remember, even if it is after you have already reacted, is progress. Gradually, you will remember earlier and earlier, until one day, you will notice the anger as it arises before it controls your words." The monk prepared to leave. "I will return in a month. Practice this one thing. One conscious breath before you respond to difficulty. That is all." After the monk left, Hiroshi stood in his shop, thinking about what he had learned. One breath. It seemed like such a small thing, but he decided to try. The very next day, a customer returned fabric, claiming it had a flaw. Hiroshi felt anger surge up. The words formed in his mouth, but he remembered the monk's teaching. One breath. He inhaled slowly, feeling the air fill his lungs. He exhaled, feeling his body soften slightly. In that one breath, something remarkable happened. The anger was still there, but Hiroshi was aware of it. He could feel it as a sensation in his body, rather than being completely swept away by it. And in that awareness, he could see the situation more clearly. The customer was not attacking him. She was simply showing him a genuine flaw in the weaving. "Let me look at that," Hiroshi said calmly. He examined the cloth and saw that she was right. There was a defect he had missed. "I apologize. This should not have been sold. Let me replace it with a better piece." The customer looked surprised by his response. "Thank you," she said, her own defensiveness dissolving. "I appreciate your honesty." After she left, Hiroshi felt amazed. One breath had created a space where he could see clearly instead of reacting blindly. The monk was right. In that gap, he had freedom. But the pattern was not broken so easily. The next difficult customer came, and Hiroshi forgot everything. The man complained about prices, and Hiroshi snapped back before he even remembered to breathe. The old reaction was so fast, so automatic. Afterward, Hiroshi felt discouraged. He had failed. He had reacted just as he always did. But then he remembered the monk's words. "Do not be discouraged. Each time you remember, even after you have reacted, is progress." So Hiroshi kept practicing. Sometimes he remembered to take a breath before responding. Sometimes he forgot until after the words were already out. But slowly, gradually, he began to notice the anger earlier. He began to feel it rising in his chest before it reached his mouth. Hiroshi was making progress, but it was slow and inconsistent. Then the monk returned to his shop. "How has your practice been?" Hiroshi told him honestly. About the times he succeeded and the many times he failed. About his frustration with how difficult it was to remember such a simple thing. The monk listened with patience. "You are doing well," he said. "Better than you realize. Each time you notice your anger, even if you notice it after you have already reacted, you are strengthening your awareness. This is like building a muscle. At first it is weak, but with practice it grows stronger." He looked at Hiroshi kindly. "Let me teach you something more. When you take that conscious breath, pay attention to where you feel the anger in your body. Not the thoughts about why you are angry, not the story about what the other person did wrong, just the physical sensation. Where do you feel it? Your throat? Your stomach?" Hiroshi thought about this. "My chest, mostly. It feels tight. Hot." "Good," the monk said. "Next time anger arises, take your conscious breath and put your attention on that tightness in your chest. Just feel it. Notice it. This does two things. First, it anchors your awareness in the present moment, in your body, rather than letting you get lost in angry thoughts. Second, when you feel the anger as a physical sensation, rather than identifying with it as who you are, the gap becomes wider. You are not the anger. You are the awareness that notices the anger." This teaching struck Hiroshi deeply. He was not the anger. He was the awareness that could notice the anger. This changed everything. "Practice this," the monk said. "When anger comes, breathe and feel where it lives in your body. Just observe it like you would observe a cloud passing in the sky. You do not grab the cloud. You do not push it away. You simply notice it." Over the following weeks, Hiroshi practiced this new instruction. When a customer triggered his anger, he would take a breath and put his attention on the tightness in his chest. Sometimes the anger would dissolve in the light of that awareness. Sometimes it would remain, but he could feel it without acting from it. He could acknowledge to himself, "There is anger here," without letting it control his words or actions. One day, a particularly difficult customer came in. He was rude and demanding. He questioned everything Hiroshi said. He accused Hiroshi of trying to cheat him. In the past, this would have led to a terrible argument. Hiroshi felt strong anger rise. His chest tightened. Heat rushed through him. But he took a breath. He put his attention on the sensations in his chest. He felt the tightness, the heat, the pressure. He simply observed these sensations without acting. This man was suffering. Something in his life had made him suspicious and harsh. Hiroshi did not need to match that harshness with his own. "I understand your concerns," Hiroshi said calmly. "Let me show you exactly how I price my fabrics so you can see that my rates are fair." The man seemed taken aback by Hiroshi's patient response. His own defensiveness began to soften. By the end of their interaction, the man had purchased fabric and even apologized for his earlier rudeness. After he left, Hiroshi stood in his shop, feeling something he had not felt in years. Peace. Real peace. Not because nothing difficult had happened, but because he had met difficulty with awareness instead of automatic reaction. The gap had given him freedom. In that gap, he had chosen kindness over anger, and that choice had transformed the entire encounter. When the monk came again a month later, Hiroshi thanked him deeply. "You have given me a great gift. I am not free of anger. It still arises, but now there is space around it. I can feel it without becoming it. I can choose how to respond instead of reacting blindly." The monk smiled. "You have given yourself this gift. I only pointed to what was always available to you. The gap between stimulus and response has always been there. Mindfulness simply taught you to see it. And now that you have seen it, you can never fully unsee it. You will still forget sometimes. The old habits are strong, but you have tasted freedom, and that taste will call you back to awareness again and again." This story shows us something essential about mindfulness and the gap it reveals. Hiroshi did not learn to suppress his anger or pretend it was not there. He learned to become aware of it before it controlled his actions. The monk's teaching was simple but profound. One conscious breath creates a pause. In that pause, awareness can arise. And in that awareness, choice becomes possible. We can see ourselves in Hiroshi's struggle. How many times do we react before we even know what we are doing? How many words do we speak in anger that we immediately regret? How many times do we respond from old patterns rather than from present awareness? The Buddha's teaching about the gap between stimulus and response offers us the same freedom it offered Hiroshi. We cannot control what happens to us. We cannot prevent difficulty from arising. But we can learn to notice what arises inside us before we act on it. That noticing creates space. And in that space, we are free to choose our response. This freedom does not require us to become different people. It does not ask us to eliminate our emotions or achieve some state of perfect calm. It simply invites us to become aware of our inner experience before we let it control our outer actions. This awareness is mindfulness. And this mindfulness creates the gap where wisdom can emerge. Let us explore another story that reveals this teaching from a different angle. In a province known for fair governance, there lived a judge named Aiko who presided over disputes between neighbors and merchants. Aiko had been appointed to this position because of her sharp intelligence and her knowledge of the law. She could analyze situations quickly and apply legal principles with precision. But Aiko had begun to notice something troubling about how her mind worked. When people came before her to present their cases, her mind would form conclusions almost instantly. Someone would begin speaking, and within moments, Aiko would decide who was right and who was wrong. Her quick mind would sort everything into neat categories before she had heard the full story. She prided herself on this efficiency. Cases that might take other judges days to resolve, Aiko could decide in hours. The province benefited from her swift judgment, or so she thought. But occasionally, something would happen that troubled her deeply. Evidence would emerge late in a case that contradicted her initial conclusion. Or someone would explain a detail that completely changed the meaning of everything she had heard before. In these moments, Aiko would realize that her quick judgment had been wrong. She had leaped to conclusions too fast, without truly listening. Even more troubling, she noticed her mind resisting new information once it had formed its initial opinion. Even when evidence appeared that contradicted her view, part of her wanted to dismiss it, to find a way to maintain her original conclusion rather than revise her understanding. One day, a visiting judge came to observe Aiko's court. His name was Takeshi, an elderly man known throughout the province for his wisdom. He sat quietly in the corner of the courtroom, watching as Aiko heard cases. After the day's sessions ended, Takeshi approached Aiko. "May I share an observation with you?" he asked gently. Of course, Aiko said, feeling slightly nervous. What had this wise judge seen? You have a very sharp mind, Takeshi said. You understand the law well. You can analyze situations quickly. These are valuable qualities. But I notice something that may be limiting your wisdom. Aiko listened carefully. When people speak, your mind forms judgments very quickly. I could see it in your face. Before the first person had finished explaining their case, you had already decided. This means you are not truly listening to what they say. You are listening to confirm or deny what you have already concluded. Aiko felt defensive at first, but she recognized the truth in his words. I thought my quick discernment was an asset. Are you saying it is a problem? Not the discernment itself, Takeshi replied, but the speed with which you lock into certainty. When the mind judges too quickly, it closes itself to fuller understanding. You miss nuances. You overlook details. You hear what you expect to hear, rather than what is actually being said. He looked at her kindly. Would you like to learn a different way? Yes, Aiko said. Please teach me. Takeshi settled into a chair. Tomorrow, when people come before you, try this. When someone begins speaking, instead of letting your mind rush to judgment, simply listen. Bring your full attention to their words. Not to evaluate them or judge them, but simply to receive them. But I need to form judgments, Aiko said. That is my role. Yes, Takeshi agreed. But notice the gap between hearing and judging. Right now, these two things happen almost simultaneously in your mind. You hear something and instantly you judge it. There is no space between them. The practice is to create that space. He demonstrated by holding his hands apart. Here is hearing. Here is judging. Most people collapse these together. But if you can keep them slightly separate, if you can listen fully before you judge, your wisdom will grow. How do I do that? Aiko asked. Mindfulness, Takeshi said simply. Bring your full awareness to the act of listening. Notice when your mind wants to leap to conclusions. When you catch it doing this, gently bring your attention back to simply receiving the person's words. Do not stop your analytical mind entirely, but do not let it run ahead and judge before the full story has been told. The next day, Aiko tried to practice what Takeshi had taught. A farmer and his neighbor came before her, disputing the boundary between their fields. As the farmer began to speak, Aiko felt her mind immediately forming opinions. She caught herself. She took a breath and brought her attention back to simply listening to his words. But it was hard. Her mind wanted to analyze, to sort, to judge. Within moments, she would find herself lost in her own thoughts about the case, rather than present to what was being said. Takeshi, still observing, noticed her struggle. During a break, he spoke with her again. You are trying very hard, he said. But mindfulness is not about effort. It is about awareness. You do not need to force yourself to listen. You simply need to notice when you have stopped listening, when your mind has gone into judgment mode. That noticing itself brings you back. It happens so fast, Aiko said. By the time I notice, I have already formed my opinion. Takeshi nodded. This is natural. The habit is very strong. But each time you notice, even if it is after the fact, you are strengthening your awareness. Gradually, you will notice earlier and earlier, until one day you will catch your mind at the very moment it wants to leap to judgment, and you will be able to pause before it does. Over the following weeks, Aiko practiced this teaching. Sometimes she would remember to stay present while people spoke. She would listen to their full testimony before letting her analytical mind engage. In those cases, she noticed details she would have missed before. She heard nuances in people's voices that revealed truths beyond their words. But other times, she would forget completely. Her mind would race ahead, forming conclusions before the person had barely begun speaking. She would realize this only after the fact. Takeshi encouraged her to be patient with herself. You are not trying to become a different person. You are learning to use your mind in a new way. The quick, analytical mind is not bad. It is a tool. But right now, it is using you rather than you using it. Mindfulness puts you back in control. One day, a particularly complex case came before Aiko. A merchant claimed that another merchant had broken a contract. The accused merchant insisted that the contract terms had been different than claimed. Both had witnesses supporting their version of events. As the first merchant spoke, Aiko felt her mind forming its judgment. He seemed credible. His case seemed strong. She was ready to rule in his favor. But she remembered Takeshi's teaching. She took a breath. She brought her awareness to the simple act of listening. As she listened with full presence, something shifted. She began to notice small inconsistencies in the merchant's story, details that did not quite fit together. If she had locked into her initial judgment, she would have dismissed these as unimportant. But because she remained open, she could see them clearly. When the second merchant spoke, Aiko listened with the same quality of presence. His story also had inconsistencies, but it also had details that matched information she could verify. In the end, Aiko realized that both merchants were partly right and partly wrong. The contract terms had been ambiguous. Both had understood them differently, and both had acted in what they believed was good faith. Her quick judgment would have declared one right and one wrong. But her mindful listening revealed a more complex truth that allowed her to craft a fair resolution for both parties. After the case, Takeshi spoke with her. "What did you notice today?" "The gap," Aiko said, "between hearing and judging. When I listened fully before forming my conclusion, I saw things I would have missed. The judgment I eventually made was wiser because it arose from fuller awareness, not from instant reaction." Takeshi smiled. "You understand. The gap between stimulus and response is not just about emotions like anger. It is about every mental reaction. Opinions, judgments, conclusions. These are all responses. When we can notice them forming before they solidify, we create space for wisdom to emerge. I am beginning to see that mindfulness is about this gap," Aiko said. "Whether it is the gap between provocation and anger, or the gap between hearing and judging, or any other space between what happens and how we respond. That gap is where freedom lives." "Yes," Takeshi said. "That gap is always there. Mindfulness teaches us to see it and to use it. In that gap, we are not machines reacting automatically. We are aware beings capable of choice. This is what makes us truly human." Let yourself rest in this moment. There is nothing you need to accomplish. know where you need to go. Simply be present with what is here now. Breathe naturally. Rest fully. Allow this moment to be exactly as it is. In Zen practice, there is a quality of awareness called bare attention. This is the ability to simply notice what is happening without immediately trying to change it, fix it, or push it away. We observe our experience directly as it is, without adding commentary or judgment, without grasping at what we like or resisting what we dislike. Just watching, just aware. The Buddha taught that most of our suffering comes not from our experiences themselves, but from how we relate to those experiences. We grab onto pleasant feelings, trying to make them last. We push away unpleasant feelings, trying to make them disappear. We ignore neutral experiences, looking past them for something more interesting. This constant grasping and pushing creates tension and struggle. Mindfulness offers a different way. We can be aware of our experience without interfering with it. We can notice anger without becoming angry. We can feel sadness without drowning in sadness. We can observe our thoughts without being controlled by them. This bare attention, this simple noticing, creates space around our experience. And in that space, we find a kind of freedom. When we watch a river, we do not try to stop the water from flowing. We do not grab at the water to make it stay. We simply watch it flow past. Mindfulness teaches us to relate to our inner experience the same way. Thoughts flow through like water. Feelings rise and fall like waves. We can watch them move through us without clinging or resisting. This is bare attention. This is the witness who observes without interfering. Let us explore a story that illuminates this teaching. There once lived a night watchman named Kenta who worked in a large merchant compound. His job was to walk the grounds through the night, checking that all was secure. He would walk the same paths, check the same gates, observe the same buildings, hour after hour, night after night. Kenta took his work seriously. He believed that being a good watchman meant being constantly alert for problems. His mind was always searching, always analyzing, always ready to spot trouble. When he heard a sound, he would tense up, trying to determine if it was a threat. When he saw shadows moving, he would rush over to investigate. When he noticed something out of place, he would immediately try to fix it. This constant vigilance left Kenta exhausted. He would finish his night shift feeling drained, his mind buzzing with tension. He could not relax even when he went home. His body stayed tight. His thoughts kept racing, always on guard, always looking for the next problem to solve. One night, a new watchman joined the compound. His name was Kiro, an older man who had worked as a watchman for many years. Kenta was assigned to train him, to show him the routes and routines. As they walked together through the compound, Kenta demonstrated his approach. "You must stay alert," he told Kiro. "Listen for any unusual sounds. Watch for any movement. Be ready to respond immediately if something is wrong." Kiro nodded and walked quietly beside him. But Kenta noticed something strange. Kiro seemed relaxed. He walked with an easy gait. His breathing was calm. He observed everything around him, but without the tense vigilance that Kenta carried. "Are you paying attention?" Kenta asked, feeling concerned. "You seem too relaxed. A watchman must be ready." Kiro smiled gently. I am paying attention. But I have learned that there is a difference between being aware and being tense, between noticing and controlling. Kenta did not understand. What do you mean? May I show you something? Kiro asked. They had reached a quiet courtyard. Kiro sat down on a stone bench and gestured for Kenta to join him. Listen to the sounds around us, Kiro said. Just listen. Do not try to identify them or judge them. Just hear them. Kenta sat and listened. He heard the wind in the trees, the distant bark of a dog, the creak of wood as buildings settled. His mind immediately began categorizing each sound, analyzing whether it was normal or suspicious. What do you notice? Kiro asked after a few moments. I hear various sounds, Kenta said. I am checking each one to make sure nothing is wrong. Yes, Kiro said. You are not just hearing. You are judging, analyzing, trying to control. Watch what happens in your body when you do this. Kenta paid attention to himself. He noticed his shoulders were tight. His jaw was clenched. His breathing was shallow. Even sitting still, his body was tense with effort. Now try something different, Kiro said. Listen to the sounds, but do not try to do anything about them. Do not judge them as good or bad, normal or suspicious. Just let them be sounds. Just notice them without interfering. Kenta tried this. At first, it felt wrong, irresponsible. His job was to evaluate everything, to be ready to respond. But he followed Kiro's instruction. He let the sounds simply be sounds. He noticed them without trying to control them. Something unexpected happened. The sounds were still there, but they no longer created tension in his body. He could hear everything clearly, perhaps even more clearly than before, but without the exhausting effort of constant analysis. Do you feel the difference? Kiro asked. Kenta nodded slowly. My body relaxed, but I am still hearing everything. Yes, Kiro said. This is bare attention. You can be fully aware without being tense. You can notice without interfering. Your job is to watch, not to control everything you see. When you simply observe without all that extra effort, you actually perceive more clearly, because your mind is not clouded by tension and judgment. Over the following nights, Kenta tried to practice what Kiro had shown him. As they walked together, Kiro would gently remind him, just notice. Do not grab onto sounds or push them away. Let them come and go. You are the watcher, not the controller. But Kenta found it difficult. His old habit was so strong. When he heard a sound, his mind would immediately jump into analysis mode. Is that normal? Is that a threat? What should I do about it? His attention was never simply present. It was always trying to manage, to control, to fix. One night, they were walking past the storage buildings when Kenta heard a scraping sound. Immediately, his body tensed. His mind raced. Someone breaking in? He started to rush toward the sound. Kiro put a gentle hand on his arm. Pause, he said quietly. Before you rush, just notice what is happening inside you. Kenta stopped. He paid attention to himself. His heart was pounding. His breath was quick and shallow. His whole body was tight with alarm. All of this from a single sound. Now, Kiro said, listen to the sound again. just the sound itself. Not your thoughts about the sound. What do you actually hear? Kenta listened more carefully. The scraping sound. It was rhythmic, regular. He recognized it now. It was a shutter, loose on its hinge, moving in the wind. You created a story about danger before you even knew what the sound was, Kiro observed. Your mind jumped immediately to the worst possibility. This is not bad. It comes from caring about your work, but it creates unnecessary suffering. If you can first simply notice the sound, observe it clearly without the story, then you can respond more wisely. This struck Kenta deeply. He had been adding layers of story and emotion onto everything he perceived. A sound was never just a sound. It was immediately a potential threat, a problem to solve, something to worry about. No wonder he was exhausted. How do I stop doing this? Kenta asked. You do not stop it by force, Kiro said. You simply notice when it happens. When you hear a sound and feel your body tense, you can notice that response. You can feel the tension in your chest, the quickening of your breath. This noticing creates a small gap. In that gap, you can choose whether to let your mind spin its stories, or whether to simply observe the sound as it is. He looked at Kenta with kind eyes. The practice is not to never have reactions. The practice is to be aware of your reactions without being controlled by them. You notice the tension without fighting it. You notice the worry without believing every worried thought. You are the awareness that watches all of this, not the person caught in it. Kenta thought about this teaching as they continued their rounds. He began to notice how often his mind created stories about what he perceived. How often he added layers of interpretation and emotion onto simple sensory experiences. A shadow was never just a shadow. His mind immediately made it into a potential intruder. A sound was never just a sound. It became a crisis to manage. But when he could catch himself doing this, when he could notice the bare facts before his mind embellished them with stories, everything became simpler. A sound was just a sound until he investigated and determined otherwise. A shadow was just a shadow unless it proved to be something more. This bare attention, this simple noticing without interpretation, allowed him to be alert without being anxious. One night, several weeks into practicing with Kiro, Kenta was walking alone. He heard footsteps behind him in a dark corridor. His old pattern wanted to activate. Tension began to rise. His mind began to create stories about who might be following him and what danger might be present. But this time, Kenta caught himself. He noticed the tension rising. He noticed his breath quickening. He noticed his mind spinning its worried stories. And in that noticing, there was a gap. A space between the sound of footsteps and his reaction to the sound. In that space, Kenta simply listened to the footsteps. Just the sound itself. The rhythm. The weight. Without all his added interpretation, he could hear clearly. These were not the footsteps of someone trying to sneak. These were normal footsteps. Probably another worker or a resident returning late. He turned around calmly and saw exactly that. One of the merchants who lived in the compound, returning from a late meeting. After the man passed, Kenta stood for a moment, amazed. He had heard the footsteps. He had been aware of them, but he had not been swept away by panic. He had simply noticed, observed, and then responded appropriately. The bare attention had allowed him to see clearly instead of reacting blindly. When Kiro came to work the next night, Kenta told him about this experience. "I understood something," Kenta said. "Being aware does not mean being worried. I can notice everything without being tense about everything. The noticing itself is enough. I do not have to add all that extra struggle." Kiro smiled warmly. "You have discovered the gift of bare attention. You can be fully present, fully aware, without the exhausting effort of trying to control everything you perceive. Your job is to watch and notice, not to manage the entire universe. Just watch. Just notice. From that clear seeing, wise action arises naturally when action is needed." From that night forward, Kenta's experience of his work changed completely. He was still vigilant, still attentive, still doing his job well, but the exhausting tension was gone. He could walk through the compound, noticing everything, without the constant strain of trying to control everything. He was the witness, observing clearly, responding when needed, but not carrying the burden of managing every small sound and shadow. When his shift ended each morning, he went home feeling present and aware rather than drained and anxious. The practice of bare attention had given him a way to do his work without it depleting him. He could be fully engaged without being overwhelmed. This story reveals something important about mindfulness. Kenta's vigilance was not wrong, but his relationship to it was creating suffering. He was not just noticing things. He was constantly judging, analyzing, and trying to control what he perceived. Kiro taught him that awareness itself is enough. We can notice without interfering. We can observe without adding layers of tension and story. This teaching applies to everything in our lives. How often do we simply notice a thought, and how often do we grab onto it and let it pull us into worry or fantasy? How often do we feel an emotion and just feel it, and how often do we resist it or try to make it go away? How often do we experience a moment as it is, and how often do we immediately judge it as good or bad, pleasant or unpleasant? Bare attention teaches us that we can be aware of our experience without all that extra struggle. We can notice our thoughts without believing every thought. We can feel our emotions without being controlled by every emotion. We can observe our reactions without acting on every reaction. This simple noticing, this bare attention, creates space around our experience, and in that space, we find peace. Let us explore this teaching through another story. In a village known for its pottery, there lived a young woman named Mina who was learning the art of the potter's wheel. She had studied with her teacher for 3 years and had developed good technical skill. Her hands knew how to shape clay. She understood how to control the wheel's speed. She could create vessels that were well-formed and useful. But something troubled Mina. When she sat at the wheel to create, her mind was never quiet. She would begin to shape a bowl, and immediately her thoughts would start. Is this the right shape? Should the walls be thinner? What if I ruin it? Her attention was never fully on the clay. It was divided between the clay and her constant mental commentary about the clay. This inner chatter made her work stressful and unsatisfying. Even when she created a good piece, she found no peace in the making of it. Her mind had been judging and worrying the entire time. Mina's teacher was a woman named Sato who had worked with clay for 40 years. Sato had noticed Mina's struggle. One day, she sat beside Mina at the wheel and said, "I see that you fight with yourself while you work. Your hands shape the clay, but your mind fights with your hands." Mina felt embarrassed that her teacher had seen this. "I want to make good pottery," she said, "but my thoughts keep interfering. I cannot stop them." Sato nodded with understanding. "The trying to stop them is part of the problem. Come, let me show you something." She placed a fresh mound of clay on the wheel. "I am going to center this clay. While I do, I want you to watch my face. Tell me what you observe." Sato began to work. Her hands moved with practiced skill, but what struck Mina was the expression on her teacher's face. It was calm, present. There was no tension, no struggle visible in her features. She looked like someone completely absorbed in what she was doing, without any extra effort. After the clay was centered, Sato stopped and looked at Mina. "What did you see?" "You looked peaceful," Mina said. "Like you were not struggling at all." "Now you try," Sato said. "But do not try to look peaceful. That would just be another form of struggle. Instead, as you work, notice what your mind is doing. Do not try to stop your thoughts. Simply watch them. Be aware of them like you would watch clouds passing in the sky." Mina placed clay on her wheel and began to center it. Almost immediately, her thoughts started. "This clay is too wet. I am not doing this right. Why is it so hard for me?" But she remembered Sato's instruction. Instead of trying to stop these thoughts or believing them, she simply noticed them. There is a thought about the clay being too wet. There is a thought about doing it wrong. There is a thought asking why it is hard. Something unexpected happened. When she observed her thoughts this way, they lost some of their power. They were still there, but they became less solid, less real. They were just thoughts, passing through like clouds, rather than absolute truths she had to believe and react to. Her hands continued shaping the clay while her awareness watched the thoughts come and go. The clay centered more easily than usual. "What did you notice?" Sato asked when Mina finished. "The thoughts were still there," Mina said. "But when I watched them instead of believing them, they did not interfere as much. I could work while they passed through." "Yes," Sato said. "This is an important discovery. You cannot stop your thoughts by force. The mind produces thoughts the way the eyes produce sight. It is what minds do. But you do not have to be controlled by every thought. You can notice them without giving them all your belief and energy." She picked up a piece of finished pottery. "When you are working with clay, where should your attention be?" "On the clay," Mina said. "Yes, on the feeling of the clay, on the movement of your hands, on the actual experience of shaping. But your attention has been on your thoughts about the experience instead of on the experience itself. Your thoughts say, 'This is going badly,' while your hands are actually doing fine work. You believe the thoughts and miss the reality." Sato set down the pottery and looked at Mina kindly. "The practice I want to teach you is simple. As you work, notice where your attention is. When you find it lost in thoughts, do not judge yourself. Do not try to force the thoughts away. Simply notice that you have been thinking, and gently bring your attention back to the direct sensation of working with clay. The feeling of it, the texture, the movement. Again and again, your mind will wander into thought. Again and again, you simply notice and return to direct experience. "Is that all?" Mina asked. It seemed too simple. "That is all," Sato said. But simple does not mean easy. The habit of living in thought instead of experience is very strong. You will need to practice this with patience. Over the following weeks, Mina practiced this teaching. She would sit at the wheel and work with clay, and she would notice when her attention drifted into thoughts. Sometimes she would be lost in thought for several minutes before she realized it. But each time she noticed, she would gently return her attention to the direct sensation of the work. Gradually, something shifted. The thoughts did not go away, but they began to happen in the background rather than taking over her entire awareness. She could hear her mind saying, "This will not work," while her hands continued working skillfully. The thought was there, but it was not in charge. Her awareness was watching both the work and the thoughts about the work, without being controlled by either. One day, Mina sat down to create a large bowl. As she began shaping it, a familiar worried thought arose. "This is too difficult. You will ruin it." In the past, this thought would have made her tense, would have interfered with her work. But this time, Mina simply noticed it. There is a worried thought. She felt the worry in her chest, a tightness, a flutter of anxiety. There is the feeling of worry. She observed these experiences without fighting them or believing them. They were just experiences passing through, like weather passing through the sky. Her hands continued shaping the bowl. The clay rose smoothly under her touch. The form emerged naturally, without the interference of her worried thoughts. She was aware of the thoughts and feelings, but she was not lost in them. She was present with the clay. When the bowl was finished, Mina sat back and looked at it with surprise. It was the best work she had done, and more importantly, she had enjoyed making it. For the first time, she had been present for the entire process instead of lost in her head. Sato came over to see what Mina had made. She picked up the bowl and examined it carefully, then smiled at her student. "This has aliveness in it. I can see that you were present when you made this. Your hands were here, and your awareness was here too, not lost in worried thoughts." "I still had worried thoughts," Mina admitted. "But I was watching them instead of being them. I could see them passing through without grabbing onto them. This is mindfulness," Sato said. "You are not the thoughts. You are the awareness that notices the thoughts. When you know this difference, the thoughts lose their power to control you. They become like birds flying through the sky. You can watch them pass without trying to catch them or push them away." She set down the bowl. This same practice applies to everything, not just thoughts. Feelings arise. Sensations come and go. Desires pull. Aversions push. All of these are experiences you can notice without being controlled by them. You are the witness, the awareness that watches everything flow through. This witness is always calm, always clear, because it is not caught up in what it watches. Mina thought about this teaching. So I do not try to have no thoughts or no feelings. I just watch them? Yes, Sato said. You cannot stop the river of experience from flowing, but you do not have to jump into the river and be swept away. You can stand on the bank and watch the water flow past. You notice everything, but you are not lost in everything. This is bare attention. This is the freedom that mindfulness offers. From that day forward, Mina's relationship to her practice changed completely. She still had thoughts and feelings while she worked. Sometimes helpful thoughts, sometimes worried thoughts, sometimes no particular thoughts at all. But she was no longer controlled by them. She had learned to be the witness, the awareness that noticed everything without interfering with it. Her work deepened. Her pottery carried a quality of presence that people could feel. When others asked her how she had improved so much, she would say, "I learned to watch my mind without being lost in my mind. I learned to be present with the clay instead of present with my thoughts about the clay. This changes everything." This story shows us another dimension of bare attention. Mina learned that she could notice her thoughts without being controlled by them. She could watch her worries and judgments pass through without believing every one or fighting with them. This created space for her to be present with her actual experience instead of lost in her mental commentary about her experience. Mindfulness teaches us that we can notice this happening. We can become aware that we are thinking without being completely identified with every thought. We can watch our mental activity the way we watch weather. Thoughts come like clouds. Some are light and pleasant. Some are dark and heavy. But we are not the thoughts. We are the sky through which the thoughts pass. We are the awareness that notices them. The Buddha taught that we suffer not because we have difficult experiences, but because we resist our experiences or cling to them. Bare attention offers another way. We can let our experiences be as they are. We can notice them, feel them, see them clearly, without adding the extra layer of struggle that comes from trying to make them different than they are. This does not mean we become passive or stop taking action to improve our lives. It means we meet our present experience with awareness and acceptance before we act. From that clear seeing, wise action arises naturally. But we do not need to fight with reality as it is in this moment. We can notice it, acknowledge it, and respond to it from awareness rather than reacting to it from resistance. As you rest now with these teachings, you might notice your own thoughts arising. See if you can watch them without being completely swept away by them. Notice how thoughts come and go, appearing and disappearing like waves on water. You are not the thoughts. You are the awareness that notices them. This awareness is always here, always calm, always available, no matter what thoughts or feelings pass through it. The Buddha taught something that sounds simple but changes everything when we truly understand it. He said that most of us do not actually live our lives. We think about our lives instead. We are so lost in thoughts about the past and fantasies about the future that we miss the only moment that is actually real, which is this one, right here, right now. Think about how often this happens. You eat breakfast while planning your day. You walk somewhere while replaying a conversation from yesterday. You talk with someone while thinking about what you will say next. You are physically present, but your mind is somewhere else. You are thinking about life instead of living it. Buddhism teaches that this is one of the deepest forms of suffering. To be alive but not present for your own life. To have experiences but miss them because your attention is lost in thought. The Buddha saw that we spend most of our time in a kind of dream, a mental world made of memories and plans and stories, while the actual world, the living present moment, goes unnoticed. Mindfulness wakes us up from this dream. It brings our attention back to direct experience. Not the story about experience, but experience itself. Not thoughts about the meal, but the taste of the meal. Not ideas about walking, but the sensation of walking. Not commentary about the conversation, but the actual words being spoken and heard. Zen teaches that life happens now. Not in our memories of yesterday. Not in our plans for tomorrow. Now, this breath, this step, this moment. When we are fully present for this moment, we are fully alive. When we are lost in thought, we are only half alive, living in a mental world that exists nowhere but in our heads. Let us explore a story that showed and had developed excellent technical skill. Her fingers knew exactly where to move. She understood rhythm and melody. She could play complex pieces without a single mistake. Hana performed regularly at ceremonies and gatherings. People would compliment her playing, saying it was technically perfect. But Hana felt something was missing. When she played, she felt distant from her own music. Her fingers moved correctly, but her heart was not in it. She played the notes, but she did not feel the music. What troubled her most was that even while she was playing, her mind was elsewhere. She would be thinking about whether she was playing well, worrying about mistakes she might make, remembering times she had performed poorly, planning what she would play next. Her hands created music, but her awareness was lost in a stream of thoughts about the music rather than present with the music itself. One day, a traveling musician came through Hana's town. His name was Toma, an elderly flute player known for the depth and beauty of his performances. Hana went to hear him play at the local temple. When Toma began to play, something extraordinary happened. The music seemed to come from somewhere deeper than technique. Each note hung in the air with a kind of presence that moved everyone listening. People closed their eyes. Some had tears on their faces. The music was not just sound. It was something alive, something that touched a place beyond words. After the performance, Hana approached Toma. "Your playing is beautiful," she said. "But it is not just the technical skill. There is something else. How do you create music that moves people so deeply?" Toma looked at her with kind eyes. "May I hear you play?" he asked. Hana took out her flute and played a traditional melody. Her technique was flawless. Every note was perfect. But when she finished, she could see in Toma's face that he had heard what was missing. "You play very well," Toma said gently. "Your skill is clear. But I notice that you are not fully there when you play. Part of you is thinking about playing instead of actually playing. Do you feel this?" Hana felt something catch in her throat. He had seen it. The very thing she had been struggling with. "Yes," she admitted. "Even while I play, my mind is somewhere else. Judging, worrying, planning. I cannot seem to just play." Toma nodded with understanding. "This is common. We learn technique, but we forget to be present. We think about the music instead of being in the music. Let me show you something." He held up his flute. "When I play, where is my attention? On the music?" Hana guessed. "Not on the music as an idea or a concept," Toma said. direct sensation of playing. The feeling of breath moving through my body, the touch of my fingers on the bamboo, the sound arising in the air. These immediate, physical experiences, not thoughts about them, but the experiences themselves. He looked at her carefully. When you play, where is your attention? Hana thought about this. I think my attention is on whether I am playing correctly, on how it sounds to others, on not making mistakes. Yes, Toma said. Your attention is in your head, in thoughts and judgments, not in the direct experience of playing. This is why your music, though technically perfect, does not have life in it. Music comes alive when the musician is fully present, not when the musician is lost in thoughts about playing. He handed his flute to Hana. Play something simple, a scale, but this time, put all your attention on the physical sensations of playing. The breath leaving your body, the vibration you can feel in the bamboo, the sound touching your ears. Do not think about whether you are doing it right. Just feel the experience directly. Hana raised the flute to her lips. She began to play a simple scale. At first, her mind immediately filled with thoughts. Is this what he meant? Am I doing it right? But she remembered his instruction. She brought her attention to the feeling of breath moving through her, the sensation of her fingers on the bamboo, the sound arising. Something shifted. For just a few notes, she was actually there, not thinking about playing, but playing, fully present with the direct experience of it. Those few notes sounded different, more alive, more real. Did you feel that? Toma asked when she finished. Those moments when you were present instead of thinking? Hana nodded, amazed. Yes, just for a few seconds. But the difference was so clear. This is what you must practice, Toma said. Not just technical exercises, but the practice of being fully present while you play. Again and again, your mind will drift into thoughts. This is natural. The mind thinks. But each time you notice you have been lost in thought, you simply bring your attention back to direct sensation. The breath, the touch, the sound. Over and over, you practice returning to the actual experience of playing rather than living in your thoughts about playing. Over the following weeks, Hana practiced this teaching. She would sit and play simple melodies, paying attention to where her awareness was. Sometimes she would be fully present, feeling each breath, each note, each vibration. But more often, she would find herself lost in thought, judging her playing, worrying about technique, planning what to play next. Toma visited her regularly to guide her practice. One day, he found her frustrated. I keep trying to stay present, she told him, but my thoughts pull me away constantly. I cannot control my mind. You are not trying to control your mind, Toma said gently. You are trying to notice where it is. There is a difference. When you notice you have been thinking, you have not failed. That noticing is itself presence. That moment of awareness is the practice. He sat beside her. The Buddha taught that our minds naturally produce thoughts the way our eyes naturally see. You cannot stop this. But you can choose where to place your attention. When you notice you have been lost in thought, you are no longer lost. You are aware. From that awareness, you can choose to return your attention to the direct experience of playing. This helped Hana understand. She was not trying to have no thoughts. She was simply practicing noticing when she was lost in thought and returning to direct experience. Each time she noticed and returned, she was strengthening the practice of presence. Months passed. Gradually, Hana found she could play entire pieces while staying mostly present with the direct experience. Her mind would still wander sometimes. Thoughts would still arise, but she would notice more quickly and return to presence more easily. One evening, Hana was invited to play at a ceremony. As she prepared, she noticed the old familiar anxiety rising. Thoughts about playing well, about not making mistakes, about how people would judge her performance. But this time, she recognized what was happening. These were just thoughts. She did not have to be lost in them. When she began to play, she brought her attention fully to the experience. The feeling of breath, the touch of bamboo, the sound arising in the temple hall. When thoughts arose, she noticed them and returned to direct sensation. Again and again, presence, direct experience, the music flowing through her rather than being produced by thinking about how to produce it. Something happened that had never happened before. Hana disappeared into the music. There was no separation between the player and the playing. Just music arising, moment by moment, from complete presence. Her technique served this presence, but the presence itself was what gave the music life. When she finished, there was a long silence in the temple. Then someone began to weep quietly. Others sat with eyes closed, still absorbed in what they had heard. Hana looked down at her flute, amazed. This was what Toma had been trying to teach her. When she was fully present, the music became alive in a way that technique alone could never achieve. After the ceremony, Toma approached her. "You were present tonight," he said simply. "The music was alive because you were fully there for it. This is the difference between playing notes and making music, between going through motions and truly living what you do." Hana bowed to her teacher. "You taught me that I had been thinking about playing instead of actually playing, that I had been lost in my head instead of present in my life. This does not just apply to music, does it?" "No," Toma said. "This applies to everything. We can think about eating or we can taste our food. We can think about walking or we can feel our steps. We can think about living or we can actually live. Mindfulness is the practice of choosing direct experience over mental commentary, of being present for our lives instead of lost in thoughts about our lives." Buddhism shows us that Hana's struggle is universal. We all spend most of our time thinking about our experiences rather than having our experiences. The Buddha recognized this as one of the fundamental ways we create suffering for ourselves. We have this precious gift of being alive, of having sensory experiences, of being present in the world. But we are so lost in our mental worlds that we miss it. Zen teachings emphasize this point strongly. They say that when you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. Do not eat while thinking about something else. Do not walk while lost in mental chatter. Be fully present for whatever you are actually doing. This is how to truly live. The difference between thinking about life and living life is the difference between reading a menu and tasting food. The menu can describe the food in great detail. It can tell you about flavors and ingredients and preparation. but it cannot give you the taste. For that, you must actually eat. Our thoughts are like menus. They describe reality. They tell stories about it. But they are not reality itself. When we live primarily in our thoughts, we are reading menus instead of tasting food. We are thinking about life instead of experiencing it directly. Let us explore this teaching through another story. In a small mountain village, there lived a woman named Emmy who had a young son. Emmy loved her son deeply and wanted to be a good mother. She tried to spend time with him each day, playing with him, teaching him, being present for his childhood. But Emmy had a problem she could not seem to solve. Even when she was with her son, her mind was somewhere else. While he played, she would be thinking about work she needed to do. While he talked to her, she would be planning the next meal or worrying about household tasks. While they walked together, she would be lost in thoughts about the past or concerns about the future. Her body was with her son, but her awareness was elsewhere. She was thinking about being with him instead of actually being with him. And she could feel that this was robbing them both of something precious. Time was passing. Her son was growing, and she was missing it, lost in her own head. One day, an old woman named Sora came to live in the village. She was a grandmother who had raised many children and now lived simply, helping neighbors and tending her small garden. Emmy sometimes saw Sora sitting with children from the village, and she noticed something remarkable. When Sora was with a child, she was completely present. She would listen to their stories with full attention. She would play their games with genuine engagement. There was no sense that her mind was somewhere else. Emmy approached Sora one day and asked, "How do you stay so present with children? When I am with my son, my mind is always wandering to other things. I want to be there for him, but I cannot seem to stop my thoughts from pulling me away." Sora invited Emmy to sit with her. "This is a common struggle," she said kindly. "Our minds are very busy, always thinking about what needs to be done, what happened before, what might happen next. This is natural, but it means we miss what is actually happening right now." "How do I stop it?" Emmy asked. "I try to focus on my son, but within moments, my thoughts have carried me away." "You cannot stop the mind from thinking," Sora said. "But you can notice when you have been lost in thought and choose to return to the present moment. Let me show you something." She reached out and took Emmy's hand. "Right now, you can feel my hand holding yours. This is direct experience. You do not have to think about it. You simply feel it. This is being present." Emmy felt the warmth of Sora's hand, the gentle pressure of her fingers. It was simple, direct, real. "Now," Sora continued, "you could think about my hand instead of feeling it. You could think about whether this is appropriate, or why I am doing this, or what it means. Those would be thoughts about the experience, but they are not the experience itself. Do you feel the difference?" Emmy did feel it. The direct sensation of the hand was immediate and simple. The thoughts about it were something extra, something that created distance from the actual experience. Sora released her hand. When you are with your son, the same choice is available to you. You can think about being with him, or you can actually be with him. You can plan the next activity while he talks, or you can listen to his actual words. You can worry about what kind of mother you are, or you can simply be here with him as he is. But the thoughts come automatically, Emmy said. I do not choose to start thinking about other things. It just happens. Yes, Sora agreed. This is true. The thoughts arise on their own, but you can notice when they have carried you away. And when you notice, you can make a choice. You can stay lost in thought, or you can return your attention to your son, to his face, his voice, the feeling of his small hand in yours, the direct experience of being together. She looked at Emmy with gentle eyes. The practice is simply this. When you are with your son, notice where your attention is. When you find it lost in thoughts about other things, do not judge yourself. Simply bring it back to him, to this moment, to what is actually happening. You will need to do this many times. Your mind will wander many times. But each time you notice and return, you are practicing presence. You are choosing to actually live your life instead of thinking about it. Emmy decided to practice this teaching. The next day, when her son came to her with a small flower he had found, Emmy noticed her mind immediately starting to think about tasks she needed to do. But she caught herself. She brought her attention fully to her son, to his excited face, to the small flower he held out, to his words describing where he found it. For just those few moments, she was completely there. Not thinking about being there, but actually present. And in that presence, she saw something she had been missing. The joy in her son's eyes. The wonder he felt at this simple flower. The gift he was offering her by sharing it. Something cracked open in Emmy's heart. This was what she had been missing, lost in her thoughts. These moments of genuine connection. These small, precious experiences that happened only once and then were gone forever. Over the following weeks, Emmy practiced bringing her attention back to the present moment when she was with her son. It was difficult. Her mind was so used to wandering. She would be playing with him and suddenly realize she had been thinking about something else entirely, not present at all for several minutes. But she kept practicing. Each time she noticed, she returned. Each time her thoughts carried her away, she came back. Sora would check on her progress. "How is your practice?" she asked one day. "I fail more than I succeed," Emmy admitted. "My mind still wanders constantly, but I am noticing it more quickly now. And when I do manage to be fully present, everything is different. I see my son more clearly. I hear what he actually says instead of what I assume he is saying. I feel the moments we share instead of missing them." "This is good progress," Sora said. The Buddha taught that our minds create two kinds of time. There is clock time, which is useful for planning and organizing our lives. But there is also psychological time, which is when we live in past and future in our minds. This psychological time is where we lose our lives. She continued, "When you are truly present with your son, there is no past and future. There is only now, only this moment. This is not clock time, which still exists and is useful. This is freedom from psychological time, from the mental habit of always being somewhere other than where you actually are." One afternoon, Emmy was walking with her son through the forest near their village. At first, her mind was busy with thoughts, things she needed to do, conversations she needed to have, worries about the future. Her son was talking to her, But she was only half listening, her attention divided between him and her thoughts. Then she noticed what was happening. She was walking through this beautiful forest with her son, and she was completely absent, lost in her head. She made a choice. She brought her full attention to this moment. She felt her feet on the ground. She felt her son's small hand in hers. She heard the birds in the trees. She saw the pattern of light filtering through leaves. She listened to her son's voice, actually listened, hearing not just the words but the excitement in his tone as he pointed out a beetle on a tree trunk. In that presence, time seemed to expand. The moment became full and rich. She was not thinking about this walk. She was actually walking. She was not thinking about her son. She was actually with her son. The difference was everything. When they returned home, Emmy felt something she had not felt in a long time. A sense of having truly lived the last hour, of having been present for it, of having tasted it instead of just thinking about it. She understood what Sora had been teaching her. Life happens in moments like this. In the direct experience of walking, listening, seeing, touching. Not in our thoughts about these things, but in the things themselves. When we live in our heads, we miss our lives. When we are present, we are truly alive. Years later, when her son was grown, Emmy would remember that walk in the forest. Not because anything remarkable had happened, but because she had been fully there for it. She had been present. And because of that presence, the memory was vivid and alive, unlike so many moments she had missed while lost in thought. The Buddha taught that most people live their entire lives half asleep, lost in a dream of thoughts about the past and future. Zen practice is about waking up from that dream, about being present for the life that is actually happening, not the life we think about. This teaching is not about rejecting thought. Thinking is useful. We need to plan, to remember, to solve problems. But we do not need to be lost in thought all the time. We can think when thinking is helpful, and we can be present with direct experience when we are eating, walking, listening, or simply being alive. Mindfulness shows us the difference between these two modes, between thinking about life and living life, between mental commentary and direct experience. When we practice mindfulness, we practice returning again and again from thought to presence, from the menu to the taste, from ideas about reality to reality itself. This is how we wake up to our own lives. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the sensation of breathing. Not the idea of breathing, but the actual feeling of it. Air moving in, air moving out. This simple, direct experience. Let your attention rest here in direct experience. When thoughts arise, notice them and gently return to sensation, to breathing, to the simple reality of being here, now. In Zen practice, there is a teaching that seems simple on the surface, but contains profound wisdom. When walking, just walk. When eating, just eat. When sweeping, just sweep. This means bringing our full attention to whatever we are doing, no matter how ordinary or simple it may seem. Most of us believe that some activities are important and deserve our attention, while others are mundane and can be done on autopilot. We pay attention during significant moments, but zone out during routine tasks. We are present for special occasions, but absent during ordinary life. We wait for something meaningful to happen, while missing the meaning available in every simple moment. The Buddha taught that there are no unimportant moments. Every moment of life is an opportunity to be fully present, fully awake, fully alive. Washing dishes is just as worthy of our full attention as any ceremony or celebration. Walking to the well is just as precious as any pilgrimage. The ordinary moments of life, when met with full awareness, become sacred. This teaching challenges our usual way of thinking. We have been trained to divide life into important and unimportant, special and ordinary, worth attending to and not worth our attention. But Zen shows us that this division is false. Life does not happen only during the highlights. Life is happening all the time, in every simple action, in every ordinary moment. When we are present for these moments, we discover that nothing is actually ordinary. Mindfulness in daily activities transforms our relationship with life itself. We stop waiting for life to become interesting and discover that it already is. We stop rushing through routine tasks to get to something better and find richness in the tasks themselves. We stop living for the future and start living now, in whatever we are actually doing. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. There once lived a servant named Nori who worked in a large household. His duties were simple and repetitive. Each morning, he would sweep the floors and courtyards. He would carry water from the well. He would wash dishes and prepare vegetables for cooking. He would tend the small garden behind the house. Day after day, the same tasks. Nothing special. Nothing important. Nori did his work adequately, but his mind was never in it. While he swept, he would think about other things. While he carried water, he would daydream about a different life. While he washed dishes, he would wish he was doing something else. He saw his work as something to get through, a burden to endure until he could have time for himself. This made the days feel long and empty. Even though Nori was young and healthy, he felt tired all the time. His work, though not physically demanding, drained him because he resisted it mentally. He was always somewhere else in his mind, wishing his life was different, waiting for something better to begin. One day, a monk came to stay at the household for a period of study. His name was Masa, and he had been assigned to help with daily tasks during his visit. The head of the household asked Nori to show Masa what needed to be done. Nori demonstrated the morning routine. "First we sweep," he said without enthusiasm, moving the broom quickly across the floor. "Then we fetch water, then dishes. It is all very simple. Nothing difficult." He expected Masa to nod and begin working in the same distracted, hurried way. But instead, Masa picked up a broom and began to sweep with unusual care. He moved slowly, paying close attention to each stroke. He seemed completely absorbed in the simple act of sweeping, as if nothing else in the world mattered in that moment. Nori watched with confusion. "You do not need to be so careful," he said. "It is just sweeping. We do this every day. It does not need to be perfect." Masa paused and looked at Nori with gentle eyes. "Does something need to be special to deserve our full attention?" he asked. "Or can we give our attention freely to whatever we are doing?" Nori did not know how to answer this. He had always assumed that simple tasks like sweeping were beneath his full attention, something to rush through so he could get to more important things. Masa continued sweeping. The Buddha taught that how we do anything is how we do everything. If we are distracted and resentful while sweeping, we are practicing distraction and resentment. If we are present and attentive while sweeping, we are practicing presence and attention. There are no unimportant moments. Every moment is an opportunity to practice being fully alive. Over the following days, Nori watched Masa work. Everything the monk did, he did with complete attention. When he carried water, he walked slowly, feeling each step, watching the water move in the buckets. When he washed dishes, he seemed to enjoy the sensation of warm water on his hands, the smooth surface of the bowls. When he prepared vegetables, he worked with care, as if each cut mattered. Most striking was that Masa seemed peaceful. He did not rush through tasks to get them done. He did not show any resentment or boredom. He appeared content to be exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was doing. One morning, Nori asked him, "How can you be content doing such simple work? Does it not bore you?" Masa smiled. Boredom comes from the mind, not from the task. When I am fully present with what I am doing, there is no boredom. There is just this activity happening now. Sweeping, washing, cutting vegetables. Each one is completely new in each moment. He set down the dish he was washing. "Let me teach you something. Come, help me carry water." They walked together to the well. Masa filled 2 buckets and handed one to Nori. "As we walk back," he said, "I want you to put all your attention on the experience of carrying this water. Feel the weight of the bucket. Feel your feet touching the ground. Notice your breathing as you walk. Do not think about anything else. Just be completely present with the simple act of carrying water." Nori felt skeptical, but he tried. At first, his mind immediately wandered to other thoughts. What he would do later, things he wished were different about his life. But each time he noticed his mind wandering, he would bring his attention back to the bucket, his feet, his breath. Something unexpected happened. The walk, which he had done hundreds of times without really experiencing it, became interesting. He felt the coolness of the morning air. He heard birds he had never noticed before. He felt the rhythm of his own walking. For the first time, he was actually present for this simple journey from the well to the house. When they arrived, Masa asked, "What did you notice?" "It was different," Nori said slowly. "I have carried water many times, but I have never really felt it before. I was always thinking about other things. This time, I was actually here." "Yes," Masa said. "This is mindfulness in ordinary activity. Not waiting for special moments to be present, but being present for whatever is actually happening. When you carry water with full attention, carrying water becomes enough. You do not need it to be something else." He looked at Nori kindly. "Your life is made up of these simple moments. Sweeping, walking, washing. If you are absent for all of these, waiting for something more important, you miss your life. But if you can be present for them, you discover that every moment has value. Every simple act becomes meaningful when done with full awareness." Over the following weeks, Nori practiced what Masa had taught him. When he swept each morning, he would try to be fully present with the sweeping, feeling the broom in his hands, seeing the dust gather, sensing the rhythm of the movement. Sometimes he would forget and fall back into distracted, resentful sweeping. But sometimes he would remember, and in those moments everything shifted. One morning, Nori was sweeping the courtyard with full attention. He felt the early morning coolness on his skin. He heard the sound the broom made against stone, a soft, rhythmic whisper. He noticed the pattern of light and shadow as the sun rose higher, turning the grey courtyard golden. He was completely absorbed in this simple task, feeling the smooth wooden handle in his hands, watching the small clouds of dust rise and settle. As he swept near a corner, he saw a spider web stretched between two stones, covered in morning dew. He had swept this corner 1,000 times but had never noticed this web before. He paused to look at it. The tiny drops of water caught the light like jewels. The spider sat perfectly still in the center. It was beautiful in its simplicity. Nori realized this was what happened when he was actually present. He saw things he had never seen before, even in places he had been countless times. The world revealed itself when he was awake to it. When he finished sweeping, he felt something he had never felt after this task before. A sense of completion, of satisfaction. Not because the floor was clean, but because he had been fully present for the doing of it. He had not wasted those moments wishing he was somewhere else. He had actually lived them. Masa saw the change in Nori's face. "You understand now," he said. "Zen practice is not separate from ordinary life. It is ordinary life done with full attention. Every simple task becomes practice. Every moment becomes an opportunity to be awake." He paused and added, "The Buddha once said that a person who eats mindfully gains more nourishment than someone who eats while distracted, even if they eat the same food. The same is true for all activities. A person who sweeps mindfully receives something from the sweeping that a distracted person never receives. Not just the clean floor, but the experience itself, the aliveness of being fully present." The weeks passed. Masa's time at the household came to an end. Before he left, Nori thanked him. "You have changed how I see my work. I thought my life was boring and meaningless. But you showed me that I was the one making it boring by being absent for it. When I am actually present, even simple tasks have richness." Masa smiled warmly. "You have learned something valuable. The Buddha did not teach us to wait for special circumstances to practice mindfulness. He taught us to be mindful in all circumstances. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. When sweeping, just sweep. This is the practice. This is the path. Right here, in the ordinary moments of your daily life." After Masa left, Nori continued his practice. Some days, he remembered to be present with his tasks. Some days he forgot and fell back into old patterns of distraction and resentment. But gradually, being present became more natural to him. His work had not changed. He still swept floors and carried water and washed dishes. But his relationship to his work had transformed completely. He no longer saw these tasks as obstacles to real life. He saw them as life itself, as opportunities to practice presence, to be fully awake, to actually live the moments he was given. Years later, a young servant came to work at the household. The boy complained to Nori that the work was boring and beneath him. Nori smiled, remembering his own feelings at that age. "Let me teach you something," Nori said. "The work is not the problem. The problem is that you are not really doing it. You are somewhere else in your mind, wishing you were doing something else. Come, help me sweep. I will show you what I mean. And Nori taught the young servant what Masa had taught him, that there are no ordinary moments, that every simple task deserves our full attention, that life happens now, in whatever we are actually doing, not in some future moment when things will finally be different. This teaching passed from teacher to student, simple and profound, transforming ordinary work into spiritual practice. Zen Buddhism teaches that spiritual practice is not separate from daily life. We do not need to go to a monastery or sit in meditation for hours to practice mindfulness. We can practice right here, right now, in whatever we are doing. The dishes we wash, the floors we sweep, the steps we take are all opportunities to be fully present. The Buddha showed through his own example that awakening comes not from rejecting the ordinary but from bringing complete awareness to it. When we are fully present for simple tasks, they stop being burdens and become doorways to presence itself. This is why Zen masters say that chopping wood and carrying water are just as much spiritual practice as sitting meditation. In Zen monasteries, daily work is considered as important as meditation. Students do not just sit on cushions. They clean, they cook, they tend gardens. They bring the same quality of attention to sweeping a floor that they bring to sitting meditation. Because Zen teaches that mindfulness is not a special state achieved only in quiet contemplation. It is a way of meeting every moment, every activity, with full awareness. This teaching frees us from believing that spiritual practice requires special circumstances. We do not need to wait until we have time to sit in meditation. We do not need to create perfect conditions. We can practice with the life we already have, in the moments we are already living. Let us explore this teaching through another story. In a village known for its textiles, there lived a weaver named Yuki who created cloth for the community. She had learned weaving as a child from her mother and now spent her days at the loom, creating the simple cotton fabric that people used for daily clothing. Yuki had been weaving for so many years that the work had become automatic. Her hands knew what to do without her attention. She could weave while thinking about anything else. And she did. While her hands moved the shuttle back and forth, her mind wandered everywhere. Planning meals, remembering conversations, worrying about problems, imagining different lives. The weaving itself had become invisible to her. She did not see the threads or feel the rhythm or notice the cloth emerging under her hands. She was physically weaving, but her awareness was somewhere else entirely. She was so lost in thought that sometimes hours would pass without her having any memory of them. One day, a master weaver came to the village. Her name was Aina, an elderly woman who had spent her whole life working with thread and cloth. The village asked her to judge their annual weaving competition, and she agreed to spend several weeks examining the work of local weavers. When Aina came to Yuki's workshop, Yuki showed her several pieces she had made. The cloth was adequate, well made and serviceable, but Aina saw something in it that troubled her. "May I watch you work?" Aina asked. Yuki agreed and sat at her loom. She began weaving in her usual way. Her hands moved efficiently, automatically. The shuttle passed back and forth. The cloth grew longer, but Yuki's mind was already elsewhere, thinking about what she would make for dinner. After several minutes, Aina spoke gently. May I ask you something? Where is your attention while you weave? Yuki looked up, surprised by the question. I am not sure what you mean. I am weaving. Your hands are weaving, Aina said. But where is your awareness? Where is your mind? Yuki had to admit she did not know. I suppose I am thinking about other things. The weaving is so automatic now. My hands know what to do. Aina nodded slowly. May I share what I see in your cloth? Please, Yuki said. Your cloth is technically correct. The threads are properly placed. The weave is even. But it has no life in it. No presence. I can feel that it was made by absent hands. Hands moving automatically while the mind was somewhere else. Yuki felt a flash of defensiveness, but also recognition. What Aina said was true. How can you tell this from looking at cloth? After many years of working with thread, you learn to feel things, Aina said. Cloth made with full attention has a different quality than cloth made while distracted. It is hard to explain, but you can sense it. The presence or absence of the weaver lives in what they create. She looked at Yuki kindly. Would you like me to show you something? Yuki nodded, curious now. Aina sat at the loom. When I weave, she said, I am completely present with the weaving. Not thinking about it, but actually doing it with full awareness. Let me show you. She began to weave. Her movements were not faster or more skilled than Yuki's. But there was a quality of complete attention in everything she did. She seemed to feel each thread, see each pass of the shuttle, sense the cloth forming. There was no separation between Aina and the weaving. They were one continuous action. After a few minutes, she stopped and invited Yuki to look at what she had created. The weave was no different technically from Yuki's work, but somehow it looked different, more alive, more real. How did you do that? Yuki asked. I did not do anything special, Aina said. I simply gave the weaving my full attention. I was not thinking about dinner or planning tomorrow or replaying yesterday. I was here, now, feeling the thread in my hands, seeing the shuttle move, sensing the cloth emerge. This presence, this full attention, is what you feel in the cloth. She looked at Yuki. The Buddha taught that whatever we do with full awareness becomes sacred. It does not matter if we are weaving cloth or building temples. What matters is the quality of attention we bring. When we are fully present, even the simplest action becomes meaningful. Yuki thought about this. But I have been weaving for so long. How can I bring fresh attention to something I have done thousands of times? By remembering that you have never actually woven this piece of cloth before, Aina said. This thread is unique. This moment is new. If you approach it as if for the first time, with genuine curiosity and attention, it stops being repetitive and becomes fresh. She placed her hand on the loom. Let me teach you a practice. Tomorrow, when you begin weaving, take a moment before you start. Look at the threads. Really see them. Feel them with your fingers. Notice their texture, their color. Then, as you weave, keep your attention on the direct sensations. The feeling of the shuttle in your hand. The sound it makes passing through the warp. The cloth forming under your work. When your mind wanders to other thoughts, simply notice and bring your attention back to the weaving itself. Over the following days, Yuki practiced this teaching. She would sit at her loom and try to be fully present. At first, it was difficult. Her mind was so used to wandering that it would drift away within seconds. But she kept practicing, noticing when she had been lost in thought and returning her attention to the actual experience of weaving. Gradually, something changed. The weaving, which had become invisible through repetition, became interesting again. She noticed things she had stopped seeing. The way light caught the threads, making some appear silver and others gold. The satisfying rhythm of the shuttle, like a heartbeat. The emerging pattern of the cloth, each row slightly different from the last, never truly repeating. She discovered that when she was fully present, she could feel the quality of the thread in her hands. Some threads were smoother, some had a slight roughness. She could sense when the tension was exactly right and when it needed adjustment. All of this had been happening for years, but she had never noticed because her attention was elsewhere. One afternoon, she was weaving with complete presence when a neighbor stopped by to ask her a question. Yuki answered, but did not stop weaving. And she noticed something remarkable. She could speak with the neighbor while remaining present with the weaving. Her attention could hold both. This was different from being distracted. This was being present with what was happening, which included both the weaving and the conversation. When she was fully present, the work was not boring or automatic. It was alive and engaging. Even after years of doing the same task, it felt fresh because she was actually there for it. Aina visited Yuki's workshop regularly during her stay in the village. One day, she found Yuki completely absorbed in her work. Yuki did not even notice Aina enter. She was entirely present with the weaving, her attention fully with her hands, with the threads, with the emerging cloth. When Yuki finally looked up, Aina smiled. "Now you understand," she said. "This is what Zen calls just this. When you weave, just weave. Not weaving while thinking about something else. Just weaving with your whole being." Yuki looked down at the cloth she had been making. It looked different somehow. More vibrant. More real. "I felt something shift," she said. "I was not thinking about weaving. I was not thinking about anything. I was just completely here, doing this." "Yes," Aina said. "This is mindfulness in action. This is what transforms ordinary work into practice. You do not need special circumstances or sacred activities. You need only to bring full attention to whatever you are actually doing." She picked up the cloth Yuki had been weaving. "This has presence in it. I can feel that you were here when you made it. This is the difference. Not in the technique, but in the quality of attention you brought to it." Before Aina left the village, Yuki thanked her. "You taught me that I had been half alive," she said, "going through the motions of my work while my mind was somewhere else. You showed me that I could be fully present, fully awake, even while doing simple, ordinary tasks." Aina smiled. "The teaching is simple but profound. When eating, just eat. When walking, just walk. When weaving, just weave. This is the path. Not waiting for special moments to be present, but being present for every moment, no matter how simple or ordinary it may seem." Buddhism teaches that we do not need to change our circumstances to practice mindfulness. We do not need to wait for perfect conditions or special activities. We can practice right where we are, with whatever we are doing. The Buddha emphasized that mindfulness is available in every moment, in every action, no matter how ordinary. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the simple sensation of breathing. This ordinary activity, happening right now, is worthy of your full attention. Notice the feeling of your body resting. This simple experience of being supported is happening in this moment. Nothing special, nothing extraordinary. Just this. Rest in simplicity. Rest in this ordinary moment. Let it be enough. The Buddha taught that the body is always in the present moment. It is never in the past or future. Your body exists only now. While your mind can wander to yesterday or tomorrow, your body remains firmly anchored in this moment. This makes the body a gateway to presence, a doorway back to now. When we are lost in thoughts about the past or worries about the future, we can return to the present simply by feeling our bodies. The sensation of breathing, the feeling of our feet on the ground, the touch of fabric against skin. These simple physical sensations are always happening now. They cannot happen in memory or imagination. They exist only in this moment. Buddhism teaches that one of the most direct paths to mindfulness is through body awareness. When we bring attention to physical sensations, we automatically become more present. The thinking mind may be caught in past and future, but the sensing body is always here, always now. By placing our attention in the body, we step out of mental time and into real time. Zen practice often begins with awareness of posture and breath because these are physical experiences that ground us in the present. We cannot think our way into the present moment. We must feel our way into it. The body shows us how. This teaching offers practical help for anyone who struggles with an overactive mind. When thoughts are racing, when worry is spinning, when we feel lost in our heads, we can return to the body. We can feel our feet on the floor. We can notice our breathing. We can sense the weight of our hands. These simple acts of body awareness bring us back to now. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. There once lived a dancer named Lyra who had trained in classical dance since childhood. She had learned all the traditional forms and could execute complex movements with technical precision. Her teachers praised her skill. Her performances were technically flawless. But Lyra had a problem that was destroying her joy in dancing. When she performed, her mind would not be quiet. She would be thinking constantly, worrying about making mistakes, judging her own movements, comparing herself to other dancers, planning the next sequence while still in the middle of the current one. Her body danced, but her mind was elsewhere, caught in a storm of thought. This mental noise created tension in her body. Her movements, though technically correct, were stiff and effortful. She looked like she was working hard, fighting against herself. The natural grace and flow that should come with dance were missing. She was dancing from her head, not from her body. One day, a master dancer came to teach at Lyra's school. Her name was Veena, an elderly woman who had danced for 50 years. When Veena performed, even simple movements seemed to flow like water. There was no visible effort, no struggle. She appeared completely at ease in her body, as if the dance was happening through her rather than being created by her. After watching Lyra practice, Veena asked to speak with her, "You have excellent training," Veena said. "Your technique is very strong. But I see that you are fighting with yourself while you dance. Your body wants to move one way, but your mind is trying to control it another way. This creates conflict." Lyra felt tears come to her eyes. Someone finally saw what she had been struggling with. "I cannot stop thinking while I dance. My mind is always busy, always judging, always worried. I do not know how to quiet it." Veena nodded with understanding. "The mind will think. This is what minds do. But you do not need to be lost in the thinking. You can place your attention in your body instead. Let me show you something." She asked Lyra to stand in a basic position. "Feel your feet on the floor," Veena said. "Not thinking about your feet, actually feeling them. The pressure, the contact, the weight of your body being supported." Lyra brought her attention to her feet. At first, she was thinking about feeling her feet, which was still being in her head. But Veena gently corrected her. "Not the idea of your feet. The sensation itself. The direct physical feeling." Lyra tried again. This time, she dropped her attention out of her thinking mind and into the actual sensation. She could feel the floor beneath her. The solid contact. The slight pressure on different parts of her feet. It was a simple, direct experience. No thoughts needed. "Good," Veena said. "Now, keeping that awareness in your feet, slowly shift your weight to one side." Lyra shifted her weight. With her attention in her feet, she could feel exactly how the pressure changed, how the weight transferred. She could sense the small adjustments her body made to maintain balance. All of this was happening in direct sensation, not in thought. "This is body awareness," Veena said. "When your attention is in your body, in direct sensation, you are present. You are here now. The thoughts may still be happening in the background, but you are not lost in them. You are anchored in physical experience." She looked at Lyra kindly. "The Buddha taught that the body is the gateway to presence. When we are in our heads, we can be anywhere in time. But when we are in our bodies, feeling actual sensations, we are always now, always present. This is what you need to learn. Not to dance from your thinking mind, but to dance from your sensing body." Over the following weeks, Veena taught Lyra to practice this body awareness. Before dancing, Lyra would spend time simply feeling her body, the sensation of breathing in her belly, the feeling of her arms hanging by her sides, the contact of her feet with the ground. She would practice moving slowly with full awareness of sensation, raising an arm and feeling the movement from the inside, not watching it from outside with her mind's eye. She discovered that her body held information her mind did not have. When she paid attention to sensation, she could feel exactly when a movement was strained and when it flowed naturally. She could sense the subtle adjustments needed for balance before her thinking mind could calculate them. Her body knew things that thinking could not teach. Veena would guide her with simple reminders. Feel your spine lengthening. Not the idea of it, the actual sensation. Or notice how your weight shifts. Feel it happening. These instructions brought Lyra's attention out of her analyzing mind and into direct physical experience. At first, Lyra found this very difficult. Her habit of being in her head was so strong. She would start to feel her body, and within seconds her mind would pull her away into thoughts. Am I doing this right? What will the teacher think? I should be better at this by now. But Veena encouraged her to keep practicing. Each time you notice you have been lost in thought, you have a choice. You can stay lost, or you can return your attention to physical sensation. Just keep returning. This is the practice. Gradually, something began to shift. Lyra discovered. She simply placed her attention elsewhere, in direct physical sensation, and the thoughts lost their power. One day during practice, Lyra was dancing a sequence she knew well. She brought her attention fully into her body. She felt her feet pushing against the floor. She felt the stretch in her muscles. She felt the movement of her breath. She felt the air on her skin as she turned. For several moments, she was completely present in physical sensation. No thoughts about whether she was doing it correctly. No worries about mistakes. No planning of the next movement. Just the direct experience of the body moving through space. The dance flowing through her without interference from her thinking mind. When she finished, she stood breathless, amazed. The movements had felt completely different. Effortless. Natural. Alive. She had not been thinking about dancing. She had simply been dancing, fully present in her body. Veena had been watching. She smiled warmly. Now you have felt it. The difference between dancing from your head and dancing from your body. When you are fully present in physical sensation, the body knows what to do. You do not need to control every movement with arms effortless. Lyra practiced this way of dancing for many months. Some days she could stay present in her body for entire sequences. Other days, her mind would pull her away constantly. But she kept practicing the simple act of returning her attention to physical sensation, to breathing, to the feeling of movement, to the solid contact of feet on floor. One evening, Lyra was chosen to perform at an important ceremony. As she prepared backstage, she felt the familiar anxiety rising. Her mind began its usual worried chatter. What if she made mistakes? What if she forgot the sequence? But then she remembered Veena's teaching. She did not try to stop these thoughts. Instead, she brought her attention to her body. She felt her feet on the floor. She felt her breathing moving in her belly. She felt the weight of her costume, the coolness of the air, the aliveness of her body standing there. As she brought her attention into physical sensation, something remarkable happened. The anxious thoughts were still present in the background, but they lost their grip on her. She was no longer caught in them. She was anchored in her body, in the present moment, in direct sensation. When she stepped onto the stage and began to dance, she stayed with that body awareness. She felt each movement from the inside. She felt her breath flowing. She felt her feet finding the floor. She was completely present in physical experience. And from that presence, the dance flowed naturally. There was a moment midway through the performance when a particularly difficult sequence approached. Her old pattern would have been to tense up, to think ahead, to worry about executing it correctly. But instead, she stayed in her body. She felt the preparation in her muscles. She felt the gathering of energy. She felt the launch into the movement and the sensation of her body moving through space. No thought, just direct physical experience. The sequence flowed perfectly, not because she controlled it with her mind, but because she allowed her body to do what it knew how to do. When she finished, The audience was silent for a long moment. Then they began to applaud, not just with appreciation, but with genuine emotion. Several people had tears in their eyes. Something had touched them, something beyond technique. They had felt her complete presence, her aliveness in each moment. Afterward, Veena came to her. "Tonight, you danced from your true nature. You were not in your head, controlling and judging. You were present in your body, allowing the dance to flow through you. This is what moves people. Not technical perfection, but the aliveness that comes from complete presence." Lyra understood. She had discovered that the body was her anchor to the present moment. When her mind wandered into worry or judgment, she could always return by feeling her body. The breath, the feet, the sensations of movement. This simple awareness brought her back to now, again and again. And from that nowness, the dance came alive. Buddhism teaches that the body is our most reliable guide to the present moment. The mind can travel anywhere in time, but the body exists only. Memories of the past, plans for the future, worries and fantasies. His mind was like a wild horse, impossible to calm. Olin would sit on his cushion feeling frustrated and defeated. He would try to focus on his breath, but within seconds, his attention would be pulled away by thoughts. He would try to empty his mind, but more thoughts would rush in to fill the space. He would try to force himself to be present, but the effort itself created more tension and thinking. His teacher was an old monk named Paro who had been practicing for 40 years. Paro watched Olin struggle with compassion. One day, he called Olin to his room. "You are fighting with yourself during meditation," Paro said gently. "I can see it in your face, in your posture. You are trying to force your mind to be still. This creates more struggle, not less." Olin felt discouraged. "I do not know what else to do. My thoughts will not stop. I cannot stay focused. I try to be present, but my mind pulls me away constantly." Paro nodded. "You are trying to control your mind with your mind. This rarely works. Let me teach you something different. Instead of trying to control your thoughts, I want you to place your attention in your body." He asked Olin to sit in meditation posture. "Feel your feet," Paro said. Not thinking about them, just feeling them. The contact with the floor, the weight resting on them. Olin brought his attention to his feet. He could feel the cushion beneath them, the slight pressure, the temperature. "Good," Paro said. "Now notice your breathing. Not controlling it or changing it. Just feeling it. Where do you feel the breath most clearly in your body?" Olin paid attention. "In my belly. I can feel it rising and falling." "Yes," Paro said. "Keep your attention there. Feel each breath as it happens. The gentle expansion as you inhale. The soft release as you exhale. Stay with the direct physical sensation of breathing." Olin tried this. At first, thoughts still pulled his attention away. But each time Paro noticed Olin drifting into thought, he would say gently, "Return to the feeling of breathing." After several minutes, something shifted. Olin's face softened. His shoulders relaxed. He was still sitting in the same position, but the quality of his presence had changed. He was no longer fighting with himself. When the session ended, Paro asked, "What did you notice?" "When I stayed with the physical sensation of breathing," Olin said slowly, "the thoughts were still there, but I was not lost in them. I was anchored in my body. The sensation of breathing kept pulling me back to now." "Yes," Paro said. "This is what the Buddha taught. The body is always in the present. When we place our attention in physical sensation, we cannot be lost in the past or future at the same time. The body brings us back to now." He looked at Olin kindly. "You were trying to make your mind stop thinking. This is like trying to make the wind stop blowing. It creates struggle. But when you simply place your attention in your body, in direct sensation, the thinking continues, but you are no longer caught in it. You are here, feeling your breath, feeling your body, present in this moment." Over the following weeks, Olin practiced this teaching. During meditation, instead of trying to control his thoughts, he would simply feel his body, the sensation of breathing, the feeling of his hands resting on his knees, the contact of his body with the cushion. When his attention drifted into thought, he would notice and gently return to physical sensation. He began to recognize different qualities of awareness. Sometimes his attention would be tight and focused, trying to grip onto the breath. This created tension. But when he allowed his awareness to be soft and receptive, simply receiving the sensation of breathing without trying to hold it, everything relaxed. The breath breathed itself. The body sat itself. He did not need to manage everything with his thinking mind. Paro taught him to expand this body awareness beyond meditation. "When you walk," Paro said, "feel your feet touching the ground with each step. When you eat, notice the sensations of chewing, tasting, swallowing. When you work, feel your hands doing the work. Let the body be your anchor to the present throughout the day, not just during meditation." Olin practiced this in all his activities. When he walked to the meditation hall, he felt each footfall. When he swept the floor, he felt the broom in his hands. When anxiety or restlessness arose during the day, he would pause and feel his feet on the ground, feel his breathing, and the mental agitation would settle. The change was remarkable. Meditation was no longer a struggle. His mind still produced thoughts, but he was not lost in them. He was anchored in his body, in the direct experience of sitting, breathing, being present. From this grounded awareness, a natural calm began to arise. One day, Olin was sitting in meditation when he noticed something that had been troubling him, a worry about a conversation he needed to have with another monk. His old pattern would have been to get lost in this worry, to think about it for the entire meditation session. But now he had a different option. He noticed the worry arising. He felt it as a tightness in his chest, a slight quickening of his breath. Instead of following the worried thoughts, he brought his attention more fully to the physical sensations. He felt the tightness. He felt his breath. He stayed with the body. As he remained present with these sensations, something surprising happened. The worry began to release on its own. The tightness in his chest softened. His breathing deepened. He had not fought with the worry or tried to make it go away. He had simply stayed present with the physical experience of it, and it had passed like weather passing through the sky. When he told Paro about this experience, his teacher smiled. "You have discovered something important. Emotions live in the body. Worry, anger, sadness, joy, All of these are physical experiences before they are thoughts about experiences. When we stay present with the bodily sensations of an emotion, without getting lost in the story our mind tells about it, the emotion can move through us naturally. He continued, the Buddha taught that everything arises and passes away. Emotions arise as sensations in the body, and they pass away. But if we grab onto them with our thinking mind, if we make stories about them, they stay much longer. Body awareness allows emotions to be what they are, temporary experiences that come and go like clouds in the sky. Olen practiced this teaching with everything he experienced. When anxiety arose, he would feel it in his body. A tightness in his throat, a flutter in his stomach. He would stay present with these sensations instead of getting lost in anxious thoughts. When sadness came, he would feel the heaviness in his chest, the burning behind his eyes. He would allow these physical sensations to be there without resistance. What he discovered was that the emotions themselves were not the problem. The physical sensations were manageable when he stayed present with them. It was the thinking mind that made everything worse, spinning stories and creating resistance. But when he anchored his attention in his body, he could feel his emotions without being overwhelmed by them. One morning during meditation, Olen sat with complete body awareness. He felt his breathing moving in his belly. He felt the stillness of his body. He felt the aliveness that hummed beneath the surface. His mind was quiet, not because he had forced it to be quiet, but because his attention was so fully absorbed in direct physical sensation that there was no energy left to fuel endless thinking. In that moment, Olen understood what Paro had been teaching him. The body was not just a tool for meditation. It was the gateway to presence itself. Every time he felt lost in his mind, trapped in thoughts about past or future, he could return to his body, to breathing, to sensation, to the simple physical fact of being alive in this moment. This return was always available, always reliable, always bringing him back to now. Zen teachings often emphasize the body as the foundation of practice. The Buddha gave specific instructions to observe the body, to know the body, to be aware of the body in all positions and activities. This is not because the body itself is the goal, but because the body is the doorway to present moment awareness. When we are lost in thought, we are not really here. We are in the mental world of past and future. But when we feel our body, we are immediately here. The body cannot exist in the past or future. It is always now. By placing our attention in physical sensation, we step out of mental time and into this moment. This teaching gives us a practical tool that we can use anywhere, anytime. When the mind is racing, feel the feet on the ground. When anxiety builds, notice the breath. When thoughts spiral, sense the body sitting or standing. These simple acts of body awareness interrupt the mental loop and bring us back to presence. The Buddha taught his students to develop this awareness systematically, to know when they were walking, standing, sitting, or lying down, to be aware of their movements, their breathing, their posture. This constant return to body awareness trains the mind to stay present instead of constantly wandering into mental worlds that do not actually exist. Take a gentle breath now. Feel the air entering your body. Notice the sensation of breathing, the gentle rise and fall of your chest or belly. Let your attention settle into your body. When thoughts arise, simply feel your breathing. Feel your body. This simple awareness brings you home to the present moment. Buddhism teaches that the breath is the bridge between body and mind. It is both physical and subtle, both voluntary and involuntary. We can control our breathing when we choose to, yet it continues on its own when we forget about it. The breath exists at the meeting place of conscious and unconscious, connecting us to the life force that sustains us moment by moment. The Buddha gave breathing meditation as one of the fundamental practices because breath is always available to us. We cannot forget our breath at home. We cannot lose it. We do not need special circumstances to practice with it. Every moment, whether we notice it or not, we are breathing. This makes breath the most accessible anchor to the present moment. Zen practice often begins and returns to breath awareness. When the mind wanders, come back to the breath. When emotions overwhelm, notice the breath. When thoughts spiral out of control, feel the breath. The breath is always here, always now, always offering us a way back to presence. The breath also teaches us about impermanence and letting go. Each breath comes and goes. We cannot hold onto an inhalation. We must release it and allow the next breath to arrive. This natural rhythm of receiving and releasing mirrors the fundamental nature of all experience. Everything arises and passes away. The breath shows us this truth thousands of times each day. Buddhist teachings describe breath as our constant companion. From our first breath at birth to our last breath at death, breathing accompanies every moment of our lives. When we befriend the breath, when we learn to rest our attention there, we have found a reliable guide back to the present moment, available anytime we remember to notice it. Let us explore a story that shows this truth. There once lived a scholar named Doro who taught literature at a prestigious school. Doro was brilliant and accomplished, but he suffered from a mind that never stopped racing. From the moment he woke until he finally fell asleep, his thoughts churned constantly, planning lessons, analyzing texts, worrying about his students, replaying conversations. His mind was like a river in flood, rushing and turbulent, never still. This mental activity exhausted Doro. He would lie in bed unable to sleep because his thoughts kept spinning. He would sit at meals barely tasting his food because his mind was elsewhere. He would walk through beautiful gardens without seeing them because he was lost in thought. Even when he tried to relax, his mind refused to quiet. Doro had tried various remedies. He read books about calming the mind. He tried different techniques people suggested, but nothing seemed to help. His thoughts had a momentum of their own that he could not control. One day, a new teacher joined the school. His name was Talon, a quiet man who taught calligraphy. Doro noticed something unusual about Talon. Even in the midst of the school's busy environment, Talon seemed calm and centered. He moved with unhurried ease. He spoke with thoughtful pauses between his words. He seemed to carry a quality of stillness with him wherever he went. During a break between classes, Doro asked Talon, "How do you stay so calm?" "My mind never stops. Thoughts rush through constantly. I cannot find any peace." Talon smiled gently. "May I show you something simple that might help?" They walked to a quiet courtyard. Talon asked Doro to sit on a bench beside him. "Close your eyes," Talon said, "and simply notice your breathing. Not changing it or controlling it, just noticing it. Feel the breath entering your body. Feel it leaving. That is all. Doro closed his eyes and tried to notice his breathing. But within seconds, his mind had wandered off into thought. He was thinking about a lesson he needed to prepare, then about a student who had asked a difficult question, then about what he would eat for dinner. His breathing was happening, but he was not noticing it. He was lost in the stream of thoughts. After a minute, Talon spoke softly. "Where is your attention now?" Doro opened his eyes, slightly embarrassed. "I got lost in thoughts. I was not watching my breath at all." "This is very common," Talon said kindly. "The mind has a strong habit of thinking. It will pull your attention away again and again. This is not a problem. This is simply what minds do. The practice is to notice when you have been pulled away and gently return your attention to the breath, not fighting with the thoughts, not judging yourself for having them, simply returning to the breath again and again." He looked at Doro with patient eyes. "The Buddha taught that the breath is like an anchor. When a boat is anchored, the wind and currents may push it this way and that, but the anchor keeps bringing it back. Your thoughts are like wind and current. They will push your attention around, but the breath is your anchor. Each time you notice you have drifted, you can return to feeling the breath. This is the practice." Talon paused, then added, "The Buddha also taught that this practice of noticing and returning is the entire path. You will drift into thought 1,000 times, and you will return to the breath 1,000 times. Each return is a small awakening. Each time you notice you have been lost and come back to presence, you are training your mind in mindfulness. The wandering is not failure. The wandering is the practice. Without wandering, there would be nothing to return from." Over the following days, Doro tried to practice what Talon had taught him. He would sit quietly and bring his attention to his breathing. But his mind seemed more wild than ever. Thoughts came rushing in like a flood. Plans, worries, memories, ideas, all demanding his attention. He would remember to notice his breath for a few seconds, then be swept away by thoughts again. He felt discouraged and went back to Talon. "It is not working. My thoughts are too strong. I cannot stay with my breath for even a minute." Talon listened with understanding. "Let me teach you something about the breath that might help. The breath is not something you do. It is something that happens. Your body breathes whether you pay attention or not. This means you cannot fail at breathing. It is already happening perfectly without any effort from you." He gestured for Doro to sit. "When you try to watch your breath, you are probably trying too hard. You are making effort. This creates tension, which creates more thoughts. Instead, try this. Simply allow yourself to receive the sensation of breathing. The breath is already happening. You are just noticing it, like you might notice sounds in the room. No effort. Just gentle awareness of what is already occurring." Doro tried this new approach. Instead of trying hard to focus on his breath, he simply allowed himself to notice it. The gentle rise and fall. The soft sensation of air moving. When thoughts came, he did not fight them. He simply noticed he had been thinking and gently returned his awareness to the sensation of breathing. This lighter touch made a difference. The practice felt less like struggle and more like resting. His mind still wandered constantly, but each time he noticed and returned to the breath, it was easier gentler, without the harsh self-judgment he had been carrying. Talon encouraged him to practice this way regularly. Even just a few minutes each day, Talon said. The Buddha taught that practicing with the breath trains the mind in two important ways. First, it teaches the mind to notice when it has wandered and to return to the present. This ability grows stronger with practice. Second, it shows you directly that you are not your thoughts. You can watch your thoughts from a place of awareness. This changes everything. Weeks passed. Doro practiced daily, sitting quietly and returning his attention to his breath again and again. Some days his mind was very busy and he spent most of the time lost in thought. Other days, he could stay with his breath for longer periods. But regardless of how the practice went, he began to notice changes in his daily life. He discovered that the quality of his breathing throughout the day reflected the state of his mind. When he was anxious, his breath was high in his chest, quick and shallow. When he was calm, it dropped naturally into his belly, slow and full. By noticing his breath, he could recognize his mental state before it overwhelmed him. When his mind started racing during the day, he would remember to take a few conscious breaths. Just pausing to feel 3 full breaths would interrupt the mental momentum. He would feel his belly expanding with the inhale, softening with the exhale. 3 breaths. That was all it took. The thoughts would still be there, but they would lose some of their intensity, their grip on his attention. He had found a tool he could use anywhere, anytime, in any circumstance. One evening, Doro was preparing for a difficult conversation with the school's headmaster. He could feel anxiety building. His thoughts were spinning with worry about what might happen, what he should say, how it might go wrong. He felt his chest tightening, his breath becoming shallow and quick. Then he remembered Talon's teaching. He stopped and brought his attention to his breathing. At first, his breath was rapid and shallow from the anxiety, but he did not try to change it. He simply noticed it. He felt the quick inhalations, the short exhalations. He stayed present with the breathing exactly as it was. As he continued to notice his breath with gentle awareness, something remarkable happened. The breath began to slow and deepen on its own. He had not forced it to change, but by simply paying attention to it without judgment, the breath naturally settled. And as his breathing settled, his mind settled too. The anxious thoughts were still present, but they were no longer overwhelming. He felt grounded, present, able to face the conversation with more calm than he had thought possible. After the meeting, which went better than he had feared, Doro went to find Talon. "Something happened today," he said. "I was very anxious, but I remembered to notice my breathing. I did not try to control it. I just felt it, and it calmed down on its own, and my mind calmed with it." Talon nodded with a warm smile. "You discovered something important. The breath and the mind are connected. When the mind is agitated, the breath becomes quick and shallow. When the breath is calm, the mind settles too. By bringing gentle awareness to your breathing, you create conditions for both body and mind to find their natural equilibrium." He continued, "This is why the Buddha called breath awareness such a powerful practice. The breath is always available. In any moment of difficulty, you can pause and notice your breathing. This simple act interrupts the momentum of mental agitation and gives your nervous system a chance to settle. You do not need to fix anything or change anything. Just notice the breath with kindness and allow your body's natural wisdom to do the rest. Doro continued practicing with his breath. Over months, he noticed profound changes. His racing mind had not disappeared, but his relationship to it had transformed. He no longer felt helpless in the face of his thoughts. He had learned to anchor himself in his breath, to find stillness even when his mind was busy. When he sat to work on difficult projects, he would take a few conscious breaths before beginning. This simple practice helped him arrive more fully, more presently, ready to engage. When students asked challenging questions, he would breathe before responding, creating a small pause that allowed wisdom to emerge instead of automatic reaction. One day, a young teacher came to Doro with the same complaint he once had. "My mind never stops racing. I cannot find any peace. How do you stay so centered?" Doro smiled, remembering asking Talon the same question. "Let me show you something simple," he said. And he taught the young teacher what Talon had taught him: the breath as anchor, the practice of gentle return, the wisdom of not fighting with the mind but simply coming back, again and again, to the breath. The Buddha taught that breath awareness is one of the most direct paths to mindfulness. The breath is always happening in the present moment. We cannot breathe in the past or future. Each breath is completely now. By placing our attention on breathing, we automatically bring ourselves into the present. Buddhism describes the breath as a faithful friend, always with us, always available to guide us back to now. Zen practice returns to the breath again and again, not because breath is sacred in itself, but because it is such a reliable anchor to present moment awareness. The Buddha gave specific instructions for working with the breath. He taught students to know when they were breathing in and when they were breathing out, to notice whether the breath was long or short, deep or shallow, not to control it or change it, but simply to know it, to be aware of it as it naturally unfolds. This simple awareness, practiced regularly, gradually transforms our relationship with our own minds. Let us explore this teaching through another story. In a farming village in the valley, there lived a woman named Senna who worked in the rice fields. Senna's life was filled with worried about the future, whether they would have enough to eat through the winter. Her mind was constantly anxious, jumping from one worry to the next. This constant worry made Senna's chest feel tight. She would wake in the night, her heart pounding with unnamed fears. She would work in the fields with her shoulders hunched and tense. She could not remember the last time she had felt truly relaxed or at peace. An old woman named Kova lived at the edge of the village. Kova had once worked the fields too, but now she was too old for heavy labor. She spent her days in her small garden, tending vegetables and herbs. People in the village noticed that despite her age and simple circumstances, Kova seemed content. She moved with ease. She smiled often. She did not seem burdened by the worries that weighed on everyone else. One day, Senna saw Kova sitting in her garden, completely still, with her eyes closed. Curious, Senna approached quietly. After several minutes, Kova opened her eyes and saw Senna standing nearby. "Forgive me for disturbing you," Senna said. "Were you praying?" Kova smiled. "Not praying. Just breathing. Sitting here, noticing my breath. This is something I do each day." Senna looked puzzled. "Just breathing? But we breathe all the time. Why sit and do it deliberately? Come, sit with me, Kova said, patting the ground beside her. Let me show you something that helped me when I was younger and filled with worry, just as you are now. Senna sat down, feeling self-conscious. How did Kova know she was worried? Place your hand on your belly, Kova instructed gently. Now just notice your breathing. Feel your belly rise with the inhale. Feel it fall with the exhale. Just that. Nothing more. Senna did as Kova asked. She could feel her belly moving under her hand, rising, falling. But almost immediately, her mind filled with thoughts. She remembered the work she needed to finish. She thought about the meal she needed to prepare. She worried about her son who had seemed ill that morning. Where are you now? Kova asked softly. Senna opened her eyes. I was thinking about many things. I cannot just breathe. My mind goes to my worries immediately. Yes, Kova said. This is what minds do. They worry. They plan. They remember. This is natural. But you do not have to be carried away by every worry that arises. Let me teach you what a wise teacher once taught me. She took Senna's hand and held it gently. When you notice you have been lost in worry, you can choose to return your attention to your breath. Not to stop the worries, not to make them go away, but simply to place your attention elsewhere, on the sensation of breathing. The worries will still be there in the background, but you do not have to give them all your attention. Kova continued, the Buddha taught that where we place our attention is one of the few things we can actually control in life. We cannot control whether it rains. We cannot control whether we get sick. We cannot control what other people do. But we can notice where our attention is, and we can choose to place it on something helpful, like the breath. She looked at Senna with compassionate eyes. When you are worrying, where is your attention? On the worries, Senna said. On everything that might go wrong. And does this help? Kova asked gently. Does worrying about what might happen change what will happen? Senna had to admit it did not. No, but I cannot stop worrying. The thoughts come on their own. You do not need to stop the thoughts, Kova said. You just need to stop feeding them all your attention. When you notice you are worrying, take 3 conscious breaths. Feel the breath moving in your belly. This does not make the worries disappear, but it reminds you that this moment, right now, is actually okay. Right now, as you breathe, you are alive. You are here. This is enough. Over the following weeks, Senna practiced what Kova had taught her. When she woke at night with anxiety, she would place her hand on her belly and feel her breathing. She would count the breaths sometimes. 1. In. 2. Out. 3. In. 4. Out. This simple counting helped her mind settle, gave it something to do other than worry. When she worked in the fields and noticed worry building, she would pause and take 3 conscious breaths. She would feel the sun on her back. She would feel the earth beneath her feet. She would feel her breath moving. In these moments, she would realize that right now, in this present moment, she was actually okay. The worries were about things that might happen, but right now, breathing, she was alive and capable. When her mind started spinning with fears about the future, she would return to the simple sensation of breathing in this moment. She learned to recognize the feeling of being pulled into worry. There was a tightness that would start in her chest, a quickening of her breath. When she noticed these signs, she could intervene early, returning to conscious breathing before the worry spiraled out of control. It was not easy. The habit of worry was very strong. Sometimes she would be lost in fearful thoughts for hours before she remembered to breathe. But gradually, she began to notice something. The moments when she was actually breathing consciously, feeling the breath move in her body, those moments were peaceful. In those moments, she was not worried. She was just here, breathing, alive. The worries might be there in her mind, but she was not lost in them. She was anchored in her breath. One day, a heavy storm threatened the village. The rice was nearly ready to harvest, and a bad storm could ruin the entire crop. Senna felt the familiar panic rising, her mind filled with catastrophic thoughts. They would lose everything. They would starve. How would they survive? But then she remembered. She sat down and placed her hand on her belly. She brought her attention fully to her breathing. In, out, rising, falling. Just this breath. Then this breath. Then this breath. The worries were still there. The storm was still coming. Nothing had changed in the external situation, but something had changed inside Senna. She was not drowning in panic. She was breathing. She was present. She could feel her body, alive, here, now. From this place of presence, she could think more clearly about what actually needed to be done to prepare for the storm, rather than being paralyzed by fear. After the storm passed, the damage was not as bad as feared. Some crops were lost, but most survived. As Senna worked to salvage what she could, she thought about what had happened. For the first time in her life, she had faced a crisis without being completely overwhelmed by worry. The breath had given her an anchor, a place to return to, a way to stay present instead of being lost in fearful thoughts. She went to thank Kova. "You gave me a great gift," Senna said. "I still worry, but now I have a way to return to the present moment. The breath is always here, always available. When I remember to notice it, I remember that this moment is okay, even when I am afraid." Kova smiled warmly. "You have learned something valuable." The Buddha taught that breath awareness is like coming home. No matter where your mind has wandered, no matter how lost you feel in worry or fear or any other mental state, you can always come home to your breath. It is your constant companion, from your first moment of life to your last. When you befriend your breath, you always have a refuge, a place of peace you can return to. Buddhism teaches that the breath is our most faithful teacher. It teaches us about impermanence, showing us how everything arises and passes away. It teaches us about letting go, as we must release each breath to receive the next. It teaches us about presence, existing always and only in this moment. The Buddha gave detailed instructions on breath awareness precisely because it offers such direct access to mindfulness. Let your breathing be natural. Let your attention rest gently on the sensation of breathing. When thoughts arise, simply return to the breath. Again and again, the breath welcomes you home. As we come to the end of our time together tonight, take a moment to notice where you are in you, not through effort, but through simple recognition. As you drift towards sleep now, let everything soften. Let the day release its hold. Let your body rest completely, knowing that tomorrow will bring its own fresh moments to meet with awareness. Mindfulness is always available to you, not as something you achieve, but as something you return to. Again and again, just this moment, just this breath, just here, now. Sleep well, and thank you for joining us here at Sleepy Monk.